My name is Daniel. I'm one of the producers on Battle for Azeroth, and I'm working on a feature with the developers called Island Expeditions, which is on the floor here.
With Mills of Pandaria, you experimented with Valley of Four Winds as a massive sun, but then you decided to split it into transparent walls. In Battle of Azeroth, what lessons from there did you bring to create massive suns like Tirigarde, Sound, and Suldazar?
Oh yeah, so we have two massive continents, and I think we as developers have learned our craft, and we continue to learn our craft in a way that we can not only put out regular content updates like you saw through Legion, but we can also deliver these expansions that have these massive zones and these massive continents. So whether it's Kulturas or Zandalar, these zones were created over the last couple of years as we were doing both Legion and this at the same time, and we've learned. I don't know. I can't speak to the lessons learned, but I can speak to the dedication that the team has in doing this type of updates. We understand how important it is to have new places to explore. So when I think back to my first experience with Mists of Pandaria and being able to explore this entire new zone and all these beautiful areas, I think we've really been able to capture that same feeling of exploration as we look at Battle for Azeroth. So kudos to the team to not only being able to do things like Argus, which was a new zone, but as well as be able to deliver these new contents and experiences. And it's not just those continents, like what we're showing here today with Islands Expeditions. You have, you have the whole continent, the whole world of Azeroth. Azerite's bubbling up, right? And these islands are all over the place. And so you're seeing one here today called Ungol Ruins, but there's going to be more at launch, and you're going to be able to pull out a treasure map and explore. So that sense of exploration that I think you're kind of getting to the nature of in that question it's definitely here. It's definitely part of Battle for Azeroth.
Now that players get the chance to play with Kultiras, are we going to see lore-related NPCs or Easter eggs based on Warcraft 2 Warcraft 2's Kultiras history, like Dagran the Orc Slayer or something like that? I think I saw the statue, but I'm not sure if it is him.
You know, I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a lore buff, but one thing that I am really excited about, you mentioned Mr. Pandaria a second ago. I went back the other night and I watched that cutscene with Lore Walker Cho, or I think that's the right person, and he was talking about King Rastakhan, and he was talking about how Zul, the prophet Zul, had come to him with these prophecies about the cataclysm. And I kept thinking to myself, I know that we're going to see King Rastakhan in Zuldalar, Zandalar, and in the city of Zuldazar. And I am very curious to know what is going to happen with these characters. And so when you ask about, are we going to see characters that we haven't seen in a while? I think the answer is yes. I think Jaina Proudmoore and the whole Proudmoore family is a big part of this story. How do they sort of help us understand the conflict and the conflict that the Coltiran people have in joining the Alliance, for example? You think to, in Legion, Jaina, when we made a pact with the Horde, when the Alliance made a pact with the Horde to fight the Burning Legion, Jaina was the first to say, hey, I've been here, I've seen what happened, like look at what happened to my father, like I'm out of here. So I'm excited to go back to see her point of view and how does she view the events that have transpired in Legion. And as we start to look to new allies, I think, what is her journey, what is her personal story in all of this, and how can she be an ally to the Alliance and the Coltiran people?
In comparison with what we saw at BlizzCon, has there been any significant changes to the design of Heart of Azeroth?
Oh, in terms of the actual Heart of Azeroth armor, I don't know if we've had that many changes, but we are still in alpha, right? So I think this is the time frame when I think we just this last week put it out there for the first time for players to see. Beta is going to be starting up soon. And so being able to capture that feedback and see players' reaction allows for us to look at what where the design is and what we can do with it before launch. We announced the launch date of August 14th. It's coming up, but there's still a little bit of time between now and then that we like to see it ourselves. We like to play it ourselves. We as a team even allot time for us to go in and play from start to finish through the whole expansion so that we can also voice our opinion. So I think you're going to, you ask have there been changes? I think we iterate regularly, and that feedback loop with players is a part of that, right? So when you go on the forums or when you post something that has an opinion about something, Blizzard likes to talk about every voice matters, and we take that very seriously. And so what you say about the feature or how you feel can influence a design in that way.
Do you have an approximate time when alpha testers will begin to test the heart of Azeroth system, and will there be a character wipe to test it for that matter?
um, we're in a phase called alpha right now, and we just started testing Heart of Azeroth. I think there's only one piece of uh, armor out there right now, and we are planning to go to beta soon. And when we go to beta, I think you'll see us shift gears and begin to test more systems more holistically. Right now, you're just getting a first taste and a first look. So for anyone that's looking at it right now on alpha, I would say that you should expect to see more of it, more of the feature, more of Heart of Azeroth, more of the what are the rewards, what are the items as we get into beta. That's when we ourselves as development team will be in there with players playing through the content and seeing how all of these rewards kind of lead us up towards end game and beyond.
Any plans to add new dynamic content to island exploration in upcoming patches? Me in particular, I would like to see some Warcraft 2 rising orcs and human skeletons from the sunken ships that fought during the Second War.
Wow, that's a great call out. There's we haven't shown all of the islands yet, but I know one of the islands is, I think it's called the Dread Mire, and you'll see some old sunken. It's like a ship graveyard, and you'll see some of these older ships. In addition, I think that you asked about the dynamic nature of islands, and will we see more islands in future content updates? I think the answer is yes, when it fits the story. At at the beginning of Battle for Azeroth, we're just starting to understand what is Azerite and what is this power source that fueled Azeroth herself, and what can we do with it. But the Horde and the Alliance aren't the only ones that are after this resource, and this resource does things to other people. Like, you'll see the Mogu after it, you'll see the Venture Company after it, you'll see just wildlife and as we've been showing here in the demo at PAX, there's a whole event where elemental lords show up, and they themselves are trying to hoard this powerful resource for themselves. So when we think about where can we go next with island expeditions, you're going to see the story unfold, and maybe there is room for an old orc island, or something that brings back the history of what's there. Those are all great possibilities, and I'm being a little coy because I've seen some things that I think will excite you when you get there. Yeah, so those vendors are going to be seasonal in a way. You're going to see people come and go. There's the shady vendor. There's traveling vendors. Those are going to, as you play Island Expeditions, I don't know if you've noticed, but you gather doubloons from those islands, and those ancient currencies can be used with these traveling vendors to buy fantastical objects, consumables that can be used on those islands. And I've seen some pretty wild things in testing as to what can show up on those vendors. So every time I see one in town, like I see one in Zuldazar, I always run up to see what they have, because I know that it can change, right? Like, in fact, I think there are even times where I've looked at the person next to me and they seem to have a different vendor than I did. So there's definitely something dynamic going on there.
Last time that Khadgar went to the Tower of Karazhan, we got a sweet animated drama in Harbingers and an audio drama. Are we going to see some of this soon for for Azeroth? And are we going to hear from Khadgar again in this expansion?
A couple questions there. Are we going to see some of those excellent videos that the video team did? I think they just an amazing job with those Harbinger videos. I really do believe we're going to see something like that with Battle for Azeroth. Haven't seen the specifics yet, but you have to imagine big characters like Jaina would be a good person to cover there. So I would stay tuned on that one and keep an eye out, because those were so beautiful, and I really do hope that we see more of that.
Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, thank you very much.
For pre-orders, you can go to worldofwarcraft.com.
Yep.
For the standard edition and the digital delusion.
Right. Yeah, and for the first time with collector's edition, you know, if you have purchased the regular edition and you purchase the collector's edition in addition, there's now a way to get a refund through Blizzard Balance so that you're not sort of left out in the cold there. You actually have a little bit of a catch-up mechanic there. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, thanks.